This is a podcast from Rover.
The Editor-in-Chief is live in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Okay, welcome to the program. You're with the Editor-in-Chief and it's live, of course. Great to have your company this morning. 0800 863 293 is the number. Online gambling. They're now targeting your kids and their devices. First it was porn, now it's the one-armed bandit. No rules, no regulation. It's a free-for-all, and teenagers here are getting hooked on this stuff, some as young as 10 years of age. Dr Charles Livingstone is one of Australia's top researchers in this area, and he's in town for a big gambling conference and will join us very shortly to blow the whistle and talk about this here in New Zealand. Parents, don't miss this. This will be interesting. I'll also look at the problems with roadside drug testing and why it may not work here. It's in Australia, but it may not work here. And what will we do about the ever-increasing number of violent attacks on supermarket staff, the very latest number, and why so many walk away free from this? I'm Duncan, Garner, and the open line is 0800 863 293. That's our number. Call me. My question, should security guards outside supermarkets be able to hold and detain alleged shoplifters? What do you think? Jump on the YouTube, TikTok, all the details are here on the screen. Leave a comment. And it's news time. Here is Deputy News Editor Grace Cocker. Good morning.
New Zealand has committed further funding to Ukraine on the sidelines of NATO. Prime Minister Christopher Luxon is in Washington for the summit. International relations expert Robert Patman says the conflict is likely to dominate the agenda.
Mr Luxon realised that we probably have to do more to help the Zelensky government, particularly if Mr Trump comes to power and cuts off American support.
Concerns are growing for supermarket staff. Woolworths NZ has revealed physical abuse against workers has risen by 50% in the last year. Head of Safety Denver Wren says in-store teams are being assaulted in broad daylight.
When you are confronted by daily occurrences of violence and aggression, that surely has got to be an aspect that builds into, am I safe here at work?
There are calls for New Zealand to follow Australia's lead and appoint an envoy to combat anti-Semitism. The Holocaust Centre says it's been dealing with an influx of complaints on a weekly basis. A survey of Jewish parents found 80% said their children had been subjected to it at school. Actor Alec Baldwin has arrived at a New Mexico court for his manslaughter trial. It comes nearly 3 years after a cinematographer was shot and killed on the set of the film Rust. Legal analyst Ariva Martin told CNN she's not overly convinced by the case.
There's just been a lot of mistakes made by this prosecuting team, but one thing we shouldn't overlook or take lightly is the fact that they did get a conviction on the armourer.
To sport, where the fairy tale run is over for Lulu Soon at Wimbledon, the 23-year-old from Tiano cramping up late in her quarter-final defeat to Donna Vekic.
That's maybe the only regret I have is I couldn't keep up physically.
Soon leaves with $782,000 in prize money. To rugby, New Zealand were leading Spain 45-13 at half-time at the Under-20 World Championship in South Africa before the match was called off due to torrential rain. The result stands and the Baby Blacks top Pool A heading into the semi-finals. That's news and sport.
Garner.
Okay, hey, the Woolworths attacks, the assaults, so almost 1,000 assaults over a
lot
year.
of assaults.
That's huge. Have you been assaulted at work?
When I used to run a nightclub, kind of bar restaurant a couple of times, but that was mainly aggro men who didn't like me trying to elbow my way through the crowd with
You're tiny.
trays of glasses. Yeah, one guy had me up by a neck once and I had someone come in. The bouncers, because I was so little though, the bouncers loved me and always protected me, I think, more than anyone else. So I was protected quite well, thankfully.
Lucky you left there.
Yes, no, I couldn't handle hospital again.
Garner.
Okay, good morning to you. 0800 863 293. More of our children are gambling online, racking up thousands of dollars in debt and starting down a path of addiction that could stay with them for life. We spoke last week about the 11-year-old and the $16,000 worth of debt. The gambling industry is using social media to target them, but that's not the only way that they're getting hooked on this stuff. They're also being trained how to gamble when they play online games as well. So if you're like me and you didn't actually know what a loot box was, and how it sets our kids up for a gambling future, then you need to pay attention for the next few minutes because this could get interesting. Dr Charles Livingstone is one of Australia's foremost gambling researchers. He's in Auckland for this international gambling conference where some of the world's best researchers are gathering to discuss the issue of gambling in a digital world. Everything's changing, you see. He joins me now. Charles, g'day. Nice to have you on the program.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
What do we make of this? So what's the very latest stuff? I've got teenage kids and young kids, so what are we looking out for?
Well, I mean, the biggest problem we've got is that, as you know, with digital media proliferating, it's very easy for kids to get access to a whole bunch of dangerous products. And one of these, of course, is easy access to online gambling. Now, my understanding is that in New Zealand, you can do a little bit online. You can buy lotto and lottery tickets and things like that, but you can't legally wager or play online casino type games. So my understanding is that the government here is looking at legalising this in the way the British have. So they've legalised offshore sites, they give them a licence, they try to regulate them, and they get some tax from it. Now, I think from what I can gather, it's a revenue-driven exercise rather than something which is about normalising the activity. But the problem with normalising it is that it makes it much more accessible, and it means that more people do it, and it means that more people end up in diabolical trouble.
There are numerous offshore, mainly Malta-based casino sites available here in New Zealand. You sign up and away you go. You put your whole pay onto it.
Well, it's a global problem, and it's very hard to stop. I mean, in Australia, you're allowed legally to bet on pretty much anything online, but you can't play casino-style games. That's unlawful. So,
but whether it's unlawful, does that stop it though?
More or less. I mean, the Australian government's constantly blocking sites, and that's a game of whack-a-mole. Yeah, you whack it down and one pops up, but. It is reasonably effective, and the data in Australia suggests that not that many people gamble on offshore sites because there's plenty of domestic sites that you can gamble on.
Yes, in New Zealand I'm not sure there are domestic sites, but there's plenty of foreign sites. Yep. They're everywhere. Yep. You don't have to look that hard. No. Now, how are they targeting our kids?
They're targeting them through social media advertising in particular, and what we know is that the big gambling companies, the ones that are very organised, are able to target individuals. So they look at people's history, their search engine history, etc., and they're able to identify what their interests are. And so they construct very carefully crafted advertising, social media ads or displays that will appeal to that particular person at an individual level. And that we know in Australia from research that's been done analysing content that they're targeting people as young as 14 and 15, and they know they're 14 and 15.
They do, and so they can get mum or dad's credit card.
Correct.
And put it into the system really simply, press the return, and they've got themselves $100, $200, $300, whatever.
Whatever, and, it's not unusual for people to rack up quite significant debts without mum or dad noticing for a while.
Yeah, it doesn't take long, does it?
No.
What's some of the worst cases of loss you've seen?
Oh, I think, in Australia we've probably had cases of kids that are racking up debts around $20,000, $30,000 before anyone notices. And it's very easy to do because these are unlimited. There's no limit on how much you can bet. So, you get a young bloke, for example, who thinks he knows all about football and he starts betting on the football. Of course, he doesn't know as much as the bookies do.
No. Well, the house always wins, right?
The house always wins. And I think what people don't understand is that wagering or any other form of gambling has the house edge factored in. So whatever happens, the house is going to come out of it on top.
And these devices that they're on, they pick up anxiety, they pick up the number of times you're tapping and how fast you are and how furious you might be, and they lock you in, don't they? Is this correct?
Yes. I mean, we know that the way you are gambling, the pattern of gambling behaviour, can be easily analysed by algorithms which will tell the operator, if they want to look at it, whether someone is developing harmful habits or not. And the ones that they like the most are those with harmful habits because they're the ones who spend the most. More than half of the money that goes through poker machines, for example, comes from people who've got a gambling habit, a big gambling habit, and at least the same amount, the same proportion of the money that's going into online gambling is coming from the same source. That is people with serious gambling problems.
So how much money is lost in Australia on the pokies every year?
Every year in Australia is about 16 billion Australian dollars
lost
on pokies in pubs and clubs. Yes,
$16 billion lost.
Lost. Yes, that's what people lose. And at the moment in Australia, in online, it's around 8 billion per year. Right. That's the legal online gambling in Australia.
I think New Zealand's that's about 2 billion, isn't it?
Yeah, something like that. I mean, New Zealand's a much smaller country, of course, but the reality is that in terms of gambling harm, we are world leaders in Australia. We gamble the most per capita of any country on earth.
It's your Melbourne Cup, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, the Melbourne Cup's part of it, but I mean, that horse racing has been on decline for a long time. I mean, the biggest growth area now is sports gambling.
Yes.
And with Australian football and the National Rugby League, they're the two biggest objects of punting.
What should parents look out for here in New Zealand if they are worried about first of all, their credit card?
Yeah.
Maybe put a block on that. But what do they look for? What sort of behaviours?
Well, I mean, the secretive behaviour, kids sort of hiding away with their phones regularly and constantly, kids getting very agitated and upset and worried. One of the problems with gambling is that for many people it provides relief from their stress. And that's why people get hooked so easily. So you're feeling bad, you go to the pokies or you go into an online site and start betting, and that relieves that stress for the period of time.
It's an addiction, isn't it?
It's an addiction. Yep. But the problem is it never makes anything better.
No, that's right. These loot boxes, how do they work?
Well, if you're in a game, many games have... inside the game there's something else, and sometimes it's a loot box. A loot box is a sort of a mystery package where if you open it, you get a device which can be useful in the game, a golden sword or a skin cover for your rifle or whatever it is. And some of these have actual value in the real world. And so people will pay real money for them, and they can actually become quite addictive. In some countries, they are now, in Europe in particular, they're now regulated as a gambling product because in many ways they are. And there is certainly a market for them. So there's a secondary market for some of the products that you get from loot boxes.
Yeah,
so some people think they're going to make money out of it.
Yeah, this is one of these temptations locks you in.
Correct. And you don't know what the odds are of getting a particular product which may be more valuable.
When you're 14, 15, 13, whatever, and you're involved in this stuff, you have not got the maturity to realise that this is a losing game.
Correct. And, for many kids, they think, particularly the ones that get into sports gambling, think they know more than the bookies. And no one knows more than the bookies because the bookies got all the data about who's betting on what, how much they're betting, what their behaviour is like. And they're targeting you. There's no doubt about that because that's where their profits lie.
Yeah. And kids will stop going to school as well. They'll stay at home and play this stuff.
Yep. I mean, the problem with online gambling, of course, is that, as my friend Tim Costello, the Reverend who's been a long-term gambling campaigner, has pointed out, it gives you the potential to lose your house without leaving it.
Yeah. You've seen this in Australia?
Yeah.
The damage is just astonishing, isn't it?
It is astonishing. And I mean, one of the things you've got to remember is even those seemingly innocuous gambling simulators you get, so you can download a slot machine simulator and play credits on it. But in Tasmania, Australian state of Tasmania, a woman got into diabolical trouble with that, having purloined $500,000 from her employer to buy the credits to play these things. So even these sort of non-gambling apps that are simulations of gambling games can be very, very harmful. And
there's no checks and balances. Just finally, if you go into the casino, you've got people in cameras, they're watching you. If you've been there too long, they'll kick you out. You'll get 24-hour out pass or whatever it is that they do.
Yep.
Trespass you or whatever. You can't get trespass from your own bedroom.
No.
And no one's checking on you.
That's right. And because these sites are unregulated and operated offshore, there's nothing you can do about it. I mean...
Who are these people?
Well, they're large companies, large corporations based in particular jurisdictions. So, for example, Malta is a very common site.
Why is that?
Well, because it's low regulation. It's in the EU, so that means they have access to all the European markets because of the EU rules. They don't charge much tax, and they encourage these operations to set up. In Australia, for example, almost all of the bookies are licensed in the Northern Territory, which again is a low-taxing, low-regulation jurisdiction, which basically lets them do what they like.
Yeah, it's quite scary stuff, isn't it? Keep an eye out for this during the school holidays. I appreciate your time on the program. All the very best.
Thanks, Duncan. Good to meet you.
Yeah, you too.
Garner.
0800 863 293. Have you gone down that rabbit hole? Have you been down that rabbit hole before? And what did you find with the gambling, with the online gambling? They're all out of Malta. It's just some sort of rort. And have you ever won anything big? 0800 863 293. Should security guards be given the power of arrest outside supermarkets? What do you think? Let me know. 0800 863 293 is the number.
3 questions from the Editor-in-Chief. 1.
At number 1 today, how much did Labor's light rail to the airport project cost us, and what did we get for it? So we got not 1 metre of track. not 1 metre, and no light rail carriage ever landed here in New Zealand. But we did get a bill for $229 million, which Labor paid to more than 200 companies and consultants. Two firms shared in $64 million each. This approach, where National and Labor can no longer agree on critical infrastructure and projects, is now holding New Zealand back, and it's not in the public interest. As the voting public, we should demand they meet in the middle and agree on projects that they can agree on. Stop wasting our precious time and stop wasting our money. We're over it. At number 2 today was the Alatiri's grounding, the result of human error. Now, New Zealand First sent out a cryptic message yesterday suggesting the captain put it on autopilot and walked away to grab a coffee, only to return later and she was heading towards the sandbank. It's a very different proposition to a supposed mechanical failure in the steering system, isn't it? And New Zealand First suggests, imagine this. Imagine if the public of New Zealand were never told.
3.
At number 3, is it time to select the All Blacks from overseas clubs? It's currently banned, but I think it's heading there. Artie and Bowden, they showed no signs of any sort of fatigue or they were off the pace, were they? It's natural, I think. Players want to make plenty of money in what's a very short window of opportunity. Razor is desperate for this change to happen, and in Razor we believe, but will he get his way? This will be his toughest fight, as the bosses at HQ have never budged on this one. Richie Mwanga, I'd say, is first on his list.
Garner.
Yep, and a random one at number 4. Have you heard of the term raw dogging? Who's put this in the program? Raw dogging. The latest trend doing the rounds on social media, raw dogging flights. So it shows young men sitting in silence during long-haul flights with no digital distractions except to get their phones out and film themselves, of course. So my question is, what is the point? And has Kaylo ever done this?
Garner.
Answer that one, Kaylo. What is raw dogging on a flight? You have, haven't you?
I've never raw dogged. I always use some form of entertainment.
Hey, what was raw dogging initially? Wasn't it bonking?
Yeah, 100%.
It was bonking, 100%. Yeah.
I think it's kind of... It's almost like that drink Liquid Death that's marketed to be ultra masculine with like sort of gothic and death undertones, but it's just sparkling water. It's almost like ironically using something that might be, well, ironically calling or using something that's super masculine and sort of taking the piss out of how masculine it is. So I think it's kind of like that. But I don't know. I saw someone raw dogging on the flight to Gisborne last week, and that was a sight to behold. I hadn't seen that in a while.
That's not a long haul flight, although Gisborne's a long way away.
No, only an hour, but he just basically stared into the ether for an hour. I thought that was very boring. But it says something about how our brains are so... You know, we've got to have things on. We've got to be doing stuff all the time.
On planes, I just curl up and go to sleep.
Yeah, fair. But like a lot of people struggle if they have to do a bit of raw dog.
Yeah. Well, if you go to prison, there'll be a lot of raw dog.
Oh, Jesus. Okay. I'm out.
Not like that. Oh,
Garner.
I didn't mean like that. Anyway, the government is going to roll out roadside drug testing with the aim of undertaking 50,000 tests per year. This is their aim. I think they'll find it much tougher. Legislation will be introduced later in this year, giving police the power to randomly screen drivers for drugs using oral fluid testing devices, similar to current drink driving enforcement. So this is their plan. Good plans like this always sort of come right, don't they? Everyone wants impaired and dangerous drivers off the road. That's a no-brainer. But experts have serious concerns about the accuracy of these tests. Dr Amie Hayley has been researching roadside drug tests as well as the impact of drugs and alcohol on drivers. So what does her work tell us about the reliability of drug side road testing?
So in Australia, we've had roadside drug testing for quite some time now. So the police use it as a point of detection for things like cannabis, but also methamphetamine and MDMA. So it's had a bit of a tumultuous history in our country, at least, particularly when it comes to cannabis, given that there are some inconsistencies with the reliabilities of the tests themselves, and the complexities around, the idea of the presence of THC versus the intoxication. So implying that the presence of THC is a proxy for intoxication is a really complicated picture.
Yeah, because with alcohol testing, it's a lot more clear, isn't it? But you often see people caught or in a road accident, and they say there's marijuana in the system, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's caused the accident, does it?
No, well, cannabis or THC is really commonly found in people who have been involved in a collision, so whether they've been hospitalised for an injury or death. But that doesn't always tell us the whole story as to whether or not that was the reason for causing the collision. The best approximations we have of responsibility for collision is something called a culpability analysis, and that tells us whether or not someone was likely to be responsible for a crash, and if that can be attributed to the presence or the just having someone having substances in their system. And for cannabis, the risk of a collision, for being responsible for a collision, is not really much higher than that for alcohol.
Right. So when it comes to that reliability question in Australia, are prosecutions thrown out? I mean, how does it work? If it's so unreliable, then how come it's in play?
So as far as reliability goes, we know that for things like false positives, that's when a test would show up a positive result when there is not found to be any THC in their system when we have a confirmatory analysis. So just to make sure that the point of collection devices at the roadside are just a preliminary test. And then if they test positive on that, people will then have to undergo a blood test for quantification, which will then show us if and how much of a substance is in someone's blood. And so there can be issues of false positives. So this can show up in the roadside test when there isn't any confirmed in the quantification. As far as prosecution goes, police will obviously make a case based on both of those sets of evidence, and then we'll present that to the judge. And it's a complex legal procedure, which is not entirely my area, but I know that people have been, arguing the case that they might have been taking medicinal cannabis, for example, but then that runs up against our roadside drug legislation or road safety legislation, which implies that any presence of a drug is enough for prosecution, because it sort of implies that there's intoxication.
Yes, it's tough, isn't it? Because medicinal cannabis in your country has been legal for some time. In our country, it's now legal as well. Number of products, although you have a lot more products. It would seem to me to be pretty tough prosecution if you're on medicinal cannabis for some kind of anxiety or whatever your issue might be, and then to be done on the roads for it. I find that a really difficult prosecution.
Yeah, as far as the legal sense is as far as the legality of it is concerned at the moment, it's just a very black and white. You cannot have any THC in your system, irrespective of if you have a prescription for medical cannabis, which of course is, an antithesis to how we would treat other medications. So things like benzodiazepines, for example, people can drive under the influence of those drugs. Granted, they are not impaired, but that, the idea or the concept of impairment is a very complicated one. And at the moment, with benzodiazepines, for example, the onus is on the driver to decide whether or not they are too impaired to drive. But with cannabis, people are going to be putting themselves at risk of prosecution just for having taken their prescribed medication that might contain THC.
What's the benzo thing? The benzo thing you just mentioned there, that drug. What is that? Because I think that's common here, isn't it?
So benzodiazepines are things like Valium or Xanax. So people take them prescribed for things like anxiety, or also things like sleep disorders, so a short-term fix for things like insomnia. And they can cause significant impairments in driving performance. Our own research has shown that when people consume prescribed amounts of benzodiazepines with a legal amount of alcohol, they are very much more likely to crash a car, and they're significantly more impaired than either drug alone. But this is quote unquote legal. So I guess that's where some of the inconsistencies lie with the legislation around medical cannabis.
It's a really complicated area, isn't it? It's a really complicated area to get right. And for us to introduce something like this, you'd have to see it working really well in other jurisdictions, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I guess it's been a little bit of a, find out by practice in this country. So we're sort of facing at the moment some complexities around potentially changing the legislation and permitting medical cannabis patients to drive. What that looks like is unclear at the moment. So our own research group is going to be conducting some on-track studies with the oversight of the Victorian state government and looking at people who use medical cannabis and whether they're impaired when we put them in a real car, and whether or not we can sort of, I guess, identify and monitor that impairment through different levels of like occupant monitoring, so technologies, and roadside impairment testing as well.
What's worse, a driver, I don't know if you can answer this, but I'll throw it your way anyway. What's worse, a driver under the influence of booze or a driver under the influence of marijuana?
They're two different sort of risk profiles. So what we often find with people who are intoxicated by alcohol is they have very risky driving behaviours. So people would take more risks around sort of weaving in and out of traffic and just sort of, harsh braking, harsh acceleration, speeding, and that sort of evasive driving behaviour. Typically what we find with people who have cannabis in their system is they're a little bit more cautious. It might be something to do with, their awareness of, their intoxicated state. But it's also just how the two different drugs might affect people's thinking and behaviour. It's not to say that cannabis isn't impairing, because we know that it can be at certain doses, particularly when people take cannabis recreationally. This is often at doses which are much higher than people use medically, and they're often trying to achieve a high. So the THC is consumed purposefully to get that sort of psychoactive effect. Whereas when people are using it medically, that's just simply not really the case. People are using this as a therapeutic, usually to alleviate a really serious health concern like, chronic pain, for example. Exhausted drivers are dangerous. Tired drivers are dangerous. Yeah, absolutely. They cause a significant amount of the burden of road trauma. Yeah. What would be your final message to the authorities here in New Zealand if we're looking at this roadside drug testing? What would you say? I would say that there are likely to be more adaptive ways that we can work together to try and find ways to stop impaired driving. A roadside saliva test is not necessarily a good or useful proxy for impairment, and also conflating impairment with the presence of THC is not entirely useful. And you might find issues when it comes to dealing with medical cannabis patients who deserve to have the same rights as other drivers. Yeah, that's well said. We'll leave it there. I really appreciate your time. Really clear. Thank you so much. No worries. Thanks for having me. You're very welcome. Thanks, Amy. Okay, 0800 863 293 is the number. A lot of feedback coming in too. Good work, Duncan. The future of breakfast TV right here, says Mark. Did you see that, Kaylo? Did you see that? Yes, I did. Yeah. I did. Oh, I'm quite chuffed with that. Yeah, exactly. Duncan, when it comes to the Auckland Rail, expensive consultation cups of teas, that's 200 and it was about $270 million of consultants' fees. Just remarkable. Absolutely remarkable. Right. New data out today shows physical and violent assaults have increased 50% in Woolworths stores compared to last year, and team members are being threatened and abused in broad daylight. There are now almost 1,000 incidents every year. Every year, 1,000 incidents. Remember, supermarket staff were our heroes during the lockdown. Well, now, of course, they're facing these increasingly dangerous conditions. And Woolworths New Zealand's Director of Stores, Jason Stockill, joins us now. Jason, g'day. Nice to see you. Morning. This is appalling. Yes. Isn't it? It's really increased, so 50%, and it got more violent. Yeah, we are seeing that. Look, we've seen an increase over the long term since coming out of COVID. It's been slowly increasing. And yeah, it has been getting more violent with more weapons being shown to our team members and some physical assaults being on the increase as well. Wow. And so right across the board, there's more abuse, more assaults. Do you ever stop these people why are they abusing you? What's happening? Look, it's post-COVID, then cost of living. There's a bit of pressure out there, but people are, whether we say it's desperate, there's a number of different reasons why people are coming and stealing from us, and it's not just Woolworths New Zealand, it's an industry-wide problem, with retail particularly. These are arrogant, entitled pricks. Let me just stop there and you can carry on. You can take it from there. It's a different way of putting it, but definitely we feel that some of it is entitled, the way they will walk in and walk back out. We'll do everything with all our security measures. As you know, we've spent the $45 million on actually making our stores safer for our customers and our teams particularly. So what have you done there? Look, we decided to do it a year and a half ago when we saw this starting to increase. And again, the right thing to do. Never would I have thought I'd seen a day where we put fog cannons into our stores that have had a lot of break-ins and ram raids. We've got trolley locking systems now, which is the latest technology. So that stops them leaving the store? Yep, the trolleys will automatically lock if they they are working very well for us, and that stops the team needing to interact or grab the trolley, which then starts the abuse. Yeah. You've got security guards there. Yes. I wonder why.
Because you can't touch these idiots.
Well, that's why we're going to government to say, what else can we do from an industry point of view? That's just one of the things, but there's obviously other areas like trespass notices. We'd like our trespass notices to be able to go across all of our stores rather than just one site. So
right,
they can get trespassed across the whole of Woolworths.
Okay, so you ban them from, say, Point Chev, and then they're banned from everywhere?
Yes, that's what we want to start looking at doing. So that's the sort of things we're looking at. But from a security point of view, like I said, the security are there for the support of the team, but you're right, they are challenged as well. And we do spend $13 million on security, and we have different levels of our security, which is working in a lot of our sites.
How much product do you lose? What's your value of what you lose every year, do you reckon?
Well, I can't share that with you. I'd like to, but we're not going to share those figures. But it's significant. It's significant.
Why not share them? Give the public a real taste of what it is.
Yeah, it's a figure I won't be able to share at the moment today.
Right, because I think countrywide we use a figure of $2 billion of retail loss.
Yeah. And we're obviously one of the biggest supermarkets out there, so we have got a significant contribution to that.
Hundreds of millions of dollars?
Not that.
Tens of millions?
Yeah.
Tens of millions?
Yeah.
Wow, that's phenomenal.
It's a lot.
People are just walking out with stuff in their pockets.
Mm-hmm.
So security guards can't touch them? Would you like security guards to be able to hold and detain?
Look, it's an option. It's an option that we will be putting forward. What we've got to realise, though, is it's the aggression and the conflict that we're trying to avoid. So we want our teams and our security guards to risk assess.
But they know
because
this.
Of
these idiots, they know that you can't touch them. So it's free run. It's a free reign.
It is,
and they're laughing.
Yeah, and that's why we're trying to make sure that we heighten this awareness across New Zealand, because it's an industry issue. And the government have done well with some of the changes they're trying to make, and we're actually even working with the police commissioner and the Minister of Justice around actually having quarterly meetings. So we've started that up where they're talking to senior execs within inside the retail industry, which is really pleasing.
Yeah, I've heard all sorts of things, that there are sort of retail gangs that target the supermarkets for the meat, and they will go around. There'll be a team of 8 of them, and they'll target 8 different supermarkets each day. And by the end of the week, they've got all this meat, and it's on the market.
Yes,
is this correct?
That does occur. Yes, whether it's gangs or not, or just organised.
When I say gangs, I mean just a bunch of.
Yeah, it's organised, obviously, and it is unsold. We've seen that. You would have seen the incident just in the papers with the Whittaker's chocolate.
Yeah, you
don't steal a trolley of Whittaker's chocolate unless you're putting it on sale.
It is good though. Whittaker's challenges. I mean, it is good, but so a whole trolley of Whittaker's, what's that worth?
$1,300.
Straight out the door?
Yep.
Does this go into the cost of other groceries? Do you have to? No. How do you absorb the cost? It's a loss, is it?
We have to absorb it through losses. So that we can't just add that to prices. That would be just the wrong thing to do. The market's far too competitive. Customers are driving to value. We're making sure we offer value with inside our price, but also other things within stores, our service, etc. So absolutely not. We won't be putting it into price.
Right. So let's just get this clear. So you want the government to do more for the sector?
Yep.
And you would like to see security guards, the discussion had the security guards have more powers?
Well, again, that is what we are looking to try and go, what can we do in that space? But again, I wouldn't want to say that here to say we want that to happen. We've got to see what the conflicts are, because that can give you some unintended consequences.
Can, actually, yeah.
But we're working with the government, so we're pleased with the work we're doing with the government and with the police. So we just got to keep working from an industry point of view.
What would you like? If there's a golden piece of law or something you could have, what would it be?
Look, Australia have an Australian workplace protection order that they use, and we're seeing that in Woolworths in Australia. We're seeing that working well, where the courts will be more specific with individuals around a protection where they can't come into your stores. So that's something we're looking at, and then obviously the trespass notices. That's the key for us.
But you can give trespassers now, but you can't give them sort of store wide.
And realistically, when you do a trespass notice, they'll still come in. So you go, how do we trespass across the entire business, and then obviously monitor how they're coming into our stores. What about police.
Facial recognition, so they don't make it into the building itself? So if you have facial recognition, you pick them up in the car park.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I mean, this is in America. If you do this, you stop a shooter, you see.
Yes.
And I think it's been quite successful in some areas. Your competitors, I think, are using this.
That's right. So New World have been trialling it. Really pleased to see that. We're watching that, and it's something we are definitely considering. We just want to make sure that everything's okay first. We've got license plate recognition that we're using, and that works very well for us, because you can get the ping as in such from the license plate before they enter your store, because it gets from the car park.
Good, isn't it?
So that's working very well for us, but we absolutely are looking at facial recognition.
And does that also pick up stolen cars and things, so you know if there's a stolen... It does.
It'll ping to the team, and then they can alert the police.
How is it compared to Australia? Is Australia have you got as many thugs in Australia doing this as we have here?
Yeah, Australia have seen it. They seem to be behind the wave of where we are, so they're not got it as early. But we are seeing trends with obviously Woolworths Australia very similar, and it's getting aggressive as well.
But is it more aggressive here than over there?
It's about the same now. We've all had machetes pushed to us, whether it's in Australia or
So
here.
something has to change, because we can't continue to have you come in here every year and you tell us what the numbers are. Next year it'll be 2,000 assaults, and you'll still be asking for stuff to be done, because the crooks know that it's the pathway to the food, and they can walk out with it and pull the finger and say, up yours. They can do it. They know the rules. So it's got to change.
It has to change, and that's why keeping this the awareness higher in the public area as well will actually help, because people will start to understand some of the challenges retail in New Zealand is going through. And I think we've got to make sure we keep doing what we've got to do with inside retail, and hence why we're investing where we can, and we'll utilise AI technology as well to go, how can we actually get updated before it happens?
Yes.
Is what we're trying to do before they get into the supermarket.
Technology is your answer.
Yes.
Yeah, good on you. Hey, nice to see you. All the very best.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Garner.
0800 863 293. It's a debacle, isn't it? I reckon these guys they're losing tens of millions of dollars of groceries every year, and they do that because these guys get away with it. Simply get away with it. They get trespassed, then they go to the next Woolworths down the road. It's just like that. They go to the next Woolworths down the road. They don't care. They couldn't give us stuff. That's how arrogant these guys are. Entitled and arrogant. That's exactly what they are.
It's the Slam Dunk.
Yeah, so staying with the supermarkets and this practice of these arrogant buffoons walking goods, meat, beer, whatever loot they can steal under their jacket and past the ever-present but hopelessly powerless security guards at the front door, it simply has to be dealt with in a better way than what we do now, which is next to nothing. They walk in, big jackets, fill their pockets, and they simply walk out. Retail crime has put in about $2 billion a year here in New Zealand. And who pays the cost of that? We all do. If a guard so much as advances towards these idiots, they scream, they point the finger, they get abusive, they hurl racist phrases. It's a real sight, isn't it? And it's been enabled in this country because we have given security guards no powers to detain these arseholes. And the police have made their decision as well that if it's under $300, they're not turning up. So they're not coming to help either. Tough. They consider that sort of offending to be minor. So what are these shop owners to do? You can imagine some wish to run a vigilante people's force at the front door. That should work. Give Mark Richardson a Glock and he'll take the buggers out. But of course, none of that's allowed right now, right? You can't even touch them. In Woolworths, in the case of Woolworths, they're tooling up. So they haven't yet got facial recognition, but that could come. That will stop offenders entering the store. Cameras, perhaps on staff to capture assaults. But boy, this sounds like America. In the 90s, not New Zealand today, $45 million on crime-fighting tools. Now, you know who pays for that. I know that they deny it, but we pay for that. It's high prices. I really detest those who steal off others. It's so disrespectful. And Police Minister Mark Mitchell told us at the start of this year that he would now consider whether security guards got the powers of arrest. But he's gone all silent. There's been no action or any moves towards this at all. At times I look at Mitchell and I think, has the pressure got to him? Is it all too much? Certainly he's made a couple of high-profile fumbles when he first started, but just get on with it. Anyway, a positive note to end all of this. It doesn't get much publicity, but these young ram raiders that you all want to be locked up, they're actually turning their lives around thanks to the cops who take them fishing. And they talk to them about what lies ahead, and if they don't turn things around, then they will end up in the big boys' jail, and that's the end of it. 70% of these boys have re-engaged with schooling, 30% have not. But there's progress, and the ram raids have dropped to the lowest level in 5 years. They sit at 15 a month. Still too many, but the serious progress is being made. They just don't talk about it. They just don't talk about it. Now all the eyes turn to this government on retail crime. Woolworths has stumped up $45 million, but is now pressuring the government to help out and do something else. Do something to stop the rot that's currently going on.
Garner.
Okay, we need to put Darlene Turner on our plonker ranking, so we'll do that by... Have we got a sign?
No, we haven't. I've got to print it out, and then I've got to laminate it. I've actually I can run you through...
Do we need a lamination? Because...
Yeah, well, it makes it look more official, Duncan.
Yeah.
You know?
She's official.
Yeah. And
she's officially a complete plonker, isn't she?
Well, I've got a few people on here that I need to put on. Chloe Swarbrick as well.
Oh, why Chloe? I think she's...
We've asked her for an interview that many bloody times, Duncan. Has she shown?
Oh, hang on. No, I can't see.
Oh, was she not under the desk that time?
No.
Oh, right. Oh, bugger.
So we'll put Darlene on here by the end of the week.
Yeah, we'll get Darlene on there.
The Darlene of New Zealand Parliament.
Yeah. That's bloody good.
Not bad.
That's great. I think Air New Zealand needs to go on there too. Oh, they already are. Look at that. Do you know what? I had a regional flight coming back into Auckland, over an hour to wait for my bag. There were 4 regional flights coming in to the regional domestic part of Auckland.
An hour?
An hour for a bag.
Don't take a bag.
Well, why an hour? The bloody people from Blimmin' Kaitaia were coming in quicker.
Kaitaia's got no airport.
Well, that's what the flights were coming in from there.
Kiri, mate. Hey.
All right.
Okay, I'm putting Kiwi Rail up here at the top because of this suggestion by Winston Peters, the New Zealand First, that it was Captain Error.
No.
Are we being told the truth?
No, we're not. Are we ever with Winston?
No, but he tweeted it out yesterday. He put it out yesterday and said, "Is the New Zealand public not being told the truth here? Did the captain go out for a coffee and put it on autopilot?"
To be honest, that wouldn't surprise me. Just quiet.
Okay, so Kiwi Rail's on there, and this plonker and Andy, he can stay there too. But we'll get Darlene on there tomorrow.
Oh,
okay?
We'll have a whole lot more.
Yeah.
Actually, leave a comment. Who else should be a plonker? Because there's plenty happening in the news at the moment with a lot of plonkers.
So Duncan at rover.nz, email me some plonker suggestions. Duncan, I totally agree. Using a hair follicle test. This is the drug. This is the roadside drug testing. DG, you realise you're back on breakfast tally technically, and you're killing it. Keep up the good work, says James. This is absolutely the future of breakfast TV and even the media in general. Trailblazers right here. Miranda, this is great. People are starting to realise what it is. And this is what... Where have you bloody been? I've been asking you to come and join us on this thing. I was like, where are you? This is it.
There was a show called AM that is closed down. I think that's where they've been.
Never heard of it. No, I heard of it for 5 years. I heard the alarm go off at 2:30. So this is what we are, folks. This is an online morning breakfast show. We've got all staff, but the ones we've got are brilliant and they work so hard. Miranda, you can wave out there. Kaylo, Forrester is over there as well if you're just joining us. And I'm Duncan. And nice to have you here. Thank you so much. And you're just realising what it is now. So this is what we do every day. Every damn day we get up in here and it's live. And then we post it as a podcast. So if you don't catch it now, you can catch it later. You couldn't do that with the AM show. So anyway, this is us here. This is what we do. The Barrier Air fly to Kaitaia. Okay, Nicola. I'm sorry. The Barrier Air fly to Kaitaia. Barrier Air's all right. Yeah, you get a return trip. Right, Darlene will join us tomorrow on the Plonker Rankings. Nowhere else, of course, because she's in denial. That's us. This will be available as a podcast on Rover or wherever you get your fantastic podcasts. Thanks for your feedback. Lots of feedback today. We appreciate it. And all your support. I'm Duncan at rover.nz. To my team, Kaylo. He's a bit mouthy today. Miranda, Forrester and Zarina. Thank you, guys. We'll do it all again tomorrow. Remember, life's no dress rehearsal. There is no curtain raiser. This is it. We live in one of the best countries on earth. So get out and enjoy it. Have some fun. Take care. Catch you tomorrow. Ta-da.
That was Duncan Garner, Editor-in-Chief Live. Missed something on the live stream? Text Duncan to 3598 to listen back on the podcast. Want to get in touch? Call 0800 863 293.